I am Mahesh Kantilal Gandhi. I am 77 years old, coming on to 78 in April. I was a pharmacist by profession. I retired 7 years back as soon as the second grandchild came. And yes, I'm a retired person at the moment, even though I seem to be much more busier than in my working life. And got various activities, including running with the grandchildren. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. You don't have to look at the camera. You can look at me. So it's just a conversation between
Yeah.
you and I. So has Ashok Khan told you why we're doing this?
No, absolutely. It's just this morning he came and he said, "Yeah, you're coming."
Okay, cool. So the idea behind this. So let me give you a little bit of background. Just introduce myself. So my name's Priyesh. I started this project many years ago. It's just about. I've always been interested in people's stories. What makes them tick? Like how they started off in their childhood, like how they got to where they got to. And then in 2020, my mum passed away. She was really young. She was 53, and at the time I was like, obviously, I was going for all her pictures and videos and stuff that I had, and I interviewed my mum, and I had like 2 hours worth of footage, maybe 3 hours of footage, where we went to Rome, and I was interviewing her, asking her questions, and like have you got any messages for future grandkids and stuff like that. So now I've got a daughter, she's nearly 2 years old, but she's gonna know her daddy because I've got this interview footage. And I guess the kind of importance of doing something like this is that I know you're very close to the grandkids. They absolutely adore you from what I've heard. So it's almost like a legacy project, like your story to be shared forever, basically. We live forever. So that's the idea behind it. So just for me to get to know you a little bit, how did you get involved with Shishkunj? Because that's been a massive part of like Barris's life, Jay's life, Shab's life. I've not been part of Shishkunj, but I've heard a lot about it from them. So can you tell me a little bit about that first, and then we can.
I was introduced to Shishikunj. Maybe you can call it by accident, but also it was an historic event looking back now, that I actually joined Shishikunj on the very first day it was established in Dar es Salaam at the age of 7. That's when I joined Shishikunj. And I enjoyed it so much, so I actually went right through from 7 years till I left Dar es Salaam at the age of 16. And I came for my further studies to UK. And of course, at that time, then you get involved in your studies and the college life, university life, and then eventually your working life. And I had a pharmacy here in UK. And unfortunately, in 1979, my father passed away in Kenya. And my mother was there. We had a business where my cousin was with my father. So I went down to Kenya and thinking that how do I uproot a person who is almost like 60 years onwards. and bring her to London. So the decision we took, me and Bina took, was that I move out there, stay there for about 1 or 2 years, and then bring mom back with us. And so I joined the business, which was completely different from pharmacy. It was a hardware business that my father had established in 1948. And yeah, so that's how I ended up in Kenya. And instead of 2 years, we ended up staying there for about 7 years. And eventually, then I had to make a decision because of the kids, either to stay there permanently or to come back to UK, where I had a pharmacy still run by a friend of mine. So thinking in long term, we decided that no, it's best we came back to UK. So we came back to UK in 1987, and I got so much involved in establishing the second pharmacy, and the working life was more or less like 24 hours. And then after about, I think around 1992, a friend of mine said, oh, he came to sell me some tickets for a show. And I said, what show is this? And he says, oh, this is a children's show. It's called Shishukunj. And my ears just sort of popped out. And I said, what? I did not imagine that there was a Shishukunj existing in London. So immediately I sort of said, yes, I'll come and see the show. I took the children with us. And then straight away decided that I must enroll both of my children because I knew what Shishukunj had taught me. The person that I was or I am is all because of Shishukunj. And so I enrolled them, but then there was a waiting list of about, I think, 3-4 years. But then one of the persons he said, but you can still come there as a parent and help out. And that was just, magic to my ears. And I grabbed that opportunity and I started, helping out. And eventually, within 2 years, I think my children got the place in Muswell Hill, Kendra. And I got more and more involved into the activities of Shishukunj, more from the helping side of the parents, which is called Shipa. And I was then slowly pushed more towards the executive council by Praful Bhai. And yes, and then I was president in year 2000. And that's how I got involved in London Shishukunj.
So obviously you mentioned Shishukunj has played such a massive part in your life.
Yeah.
But let's take it back to your childhood. So can you tell me a little bit about where you were born? So if you can remember like hospital names, road names, anything, the country you were born in, all that kind of stuff. Give me as much information as possible. And then what it was like growing up where you were. And then we'll just flow and ask you more questions from there.
I was born on 3rd April 1947 in Nairobi. At that time, there was nothing like hospital, so the birth was taken at home. And from what I was told, one of our close relatives also gave birth more or less at a similar time. And so both of us were put like in a same court, what was called as Parnu in Gujarati. And the earliest, we were living in Nairobi in 3rd Parklands. And it called High Ridge as well. And this was opposite, at that time, obviously Kenya was British. And we had an army camp right opposite our house. And the earliest memory I have of my childhood is we had a neighbor who had, at that time, they had about 6 children. And at that time in our family, there's 2 of my elder sister and myself. And the other family and our family was almost like one. Even though we were staying next door to each other, we had an open door. So we just used to run around between the 2 houses, eat together, play together. We had like a little, you can call it now front garden, but it was a front piece of land. And we all used to play around, climb trees, dodgeball or langri and all Indian games. And we used to eat together as well.
Do you have like a favorite food that you used to eat together or anything?
No, we just used to eat what we were given. There was nothing like favorite at that time. I remember Mom cooking. I think I must have been about 2 years old at that time, and I remember Mom cooking on a sagri, which you now call like a barbecue. Cross-legged, sitting on the floor, and we all used to sit on the floor and eat together. And we used to play around where she used to cook. And I remember I must have been around 2. And I had climbed up a little bench which was just next to where she was cooking, and I was sort of probably jumping around, and the bench toppled. And so I fell on, there was this sagri on which the milk was boiling. And I fell on that, and I for some reason, I remember that incident very well. And I must have burnt. I burnt my bum, which left a lifetime mark. So that's the earliest I can remember about my childhood. And then when I went to Visha Oshwal nursery. I think at that time the nursery started when you were 5. And before that, as I said, it was all play. The piece of land we had was like a little wild. So we just used to play around there. There were trees. We used to climb the trees. There was no sewerage system at the time. It was an open gutter system. So the water from our 2 houses, plus there was like an outhouse where another family was staying. So whatever you are doing, washing, brushing your teeth, or at that time we used to use datan. Everything used to go in an open gutter, which used to go outside, again an open gutter, right to the end of the plot. And then there was open gutters again of the municipal council where the water used to flow. And where the water used to flow outside in the plot, that was the most, around there, it was the most fertile ground. So, banana trees and some vegetables and all that, they used to grow there. And we used to help out sometimes. Sometimes we just used to play in the mud. It was a muddy affair. And so at the age of 5, I went to this Visaoshal nursery school, and I think I was there for 2 years. I hadn't started like a primary school. And then one December, my uncle and his family from my uncle was in Dar es Salaam, where even my dad was before, when he first came from India somewhere in late 1920s. He came to Dar es Salaam. My dad's story is quite interesting, which, no, let me tell you my dad's story.
Yeah.
My uncle came to Africa, to East Africa, to Dar es Salaam, because our family, I wouldn't say was very poor, but was poor. Apparently my granddad died at a very early age. When my dad must have been around maybe between 12 and 14 years of old. My granddad passed away. And my grandmother obviously brought the 3 brothers. And so my eldest uncle, he was 16, he must have been about 18. So to get work in India at that time in the village called Memdawad, it was difficult. So one of our close relatives, he already was in Tanzania. At that time it was called Tanganyika. And he must have gone over to India, and he told my grandmother, to send my uncle with him. So that's how my uncle had come. And my dad, at that time was, as I said, he must have been around 12, about 14. My dad was born on the 17th February 1909. And then at the age of 16, he had given what we call it GCSE, equivalent of that in India at that time. And when he got his result, and he took it to my grandmother, and my grandmother said, oh, what's your result? And he said, I've failed. And at that time, in that era, obviously, it was a shameful thing to fail. So my grandmother sort of told him, go and get your hair chopped off, like in an anger. So he actually went and got his hair chopped off. Yeah. But then he was 16, what to do? And somehow then somebody must have said, look, why don't you go to Africa, to your brother? Now, I have no recollection of how he got the money for the passage to go from Mumbai to Dar es Salaam. But apparently, he just went there to Mumbai, sat in a dhow, which is like a sailing boat, with the sails. And in those days, it used to take about 24 days, depending on the winds, of whether you reach your destination. So he reached Dar es Salaam, and he went ashore, and then he saw some Indian. He asked, oh, do you know my brother, where he stays? And the person probably knew, so he said, you wait here. And he went and told my uncle, he said, your brother is there at the harbor looking for you. And my uncle couldn't believe it. And so he went there, and he was there. So that's how he ended up in Africa at the age of 16. So, and then he probably did some jobs. He went around Lamu. He joined a company called Smith Mackenzie, which was a big importation shipping company. So he was posted at different posts. And at the time of the war, he was in Lamu. And at that time, then they had asked to evacuate. So the children and the ladies were asked to leave first. And my mother, and at that time my sister, who was about 3 years old, they on foot started walking with the rest of the people from Lamu to Mombasa. And my father was left behind to wind up whatever of the, not the wind up, but to close the business and take whatever money and all that. So he set sail from Lamu to go to Mombasa. And the winds apparently took the boat out into the ocean. So here his company was expecting him in Mombasa, whatever, 2 days or whatever time it took, normal. And he didn't come for 7 days. So they thought he has run away with the money. But then he came back to Mombasa, and then he was posted to Kampala. in Uganda, and he was there for about 2 years. He was enrolled into Ugandan army as a reserve, and then I don't know how, but he ended up in Nairobi. So I was born in Nairobi in 1947, and then he started his business in 1948. And then, as I said, at the age of 7, when my uncle came from Dar es Salaam for a holiday, and at that time we couldn't afford the train journeys, and train journeys took so long anyway. To come from Dar es Salaam to Nairobi, it probably, I think, took almost like 2.5 days. So my uncle traveled by a bus with the family and my eldest cousin then sat my sister and myself down and said, why don't you come back with us? And at that time, the families were like one family, not that, he's uncle or he's a separate family. You are all like a joint family. And we were listening, and then she enticed me and my sister that, come there, we're staying on top of a shop which sells ice creams and chocolates, and you'll have ice cream every day. And me and my sister got enticed, and we said yes. And my mother and my father, I don't know what their feelings were, but because it was considered as a joint family, they, I think, let us go. So that's, my sister and myself, we went to Dar es Salaam. And at that time, my youngest sister, she was probably 1 year or so. So she stayed behind in Nairobi. So that's how I ended up in Dar es Salaam and started school. I was enrolled in the school. And then the reality soon sunk in that you are not getting an ice cream every day. No chocolate every day. And you couldn't speak out, at that time. The times were different. You always looked up to your elders. So me and my sister, we never said, that we want to go back. We just couldn't bring those words out. And so that's how I started my schooling in Dar es Salaam. It used to be called Government Indian Primary School, but then it was changed to Upanga Primary School, and later on I went to a secondary school, Azania Secondary School.
What was it like going to school then? Like, how was it? Talk me through like a normal, typical day. Did you get to choose your subjects you studied, or?
No, schooling was very different. That era was you just do whatever you are told, right? So on the first day I was taken to this school, I didn't get we couldn't get the admission to a school which was nearer to where we were staying. So we had to go a little bit further out, which used to be called Government Indian Primary School, and which was probably about maybe 20-25 minute walk from our home. Nobody had cars, so my uncle took me, and by walking we went there. I was enrolled, and the school was like thatched roof, different classes, not like a combined building. There were sort of, different classes like bandas, And I think for a week, he came and dropped me and picked me up. And then after a week, I was on my own to go to the school and come back.
And what was that? Was that quite a scary thing? Do you remember
I think the first 2-3 days, but then everybody was walking at that time. So, when you are going there, a lot of children were going. So I wouldn't say it was that kind of scary. It was just a normal way of life. And the school, as I say, was a thatched roof in which snakes used to stay. So sometimes during the class, a snake would fall down. And we will all be evacuated, take our chairs outside and have the lesson in the open then, And outside, where the school was, then after that it was like a wild land. So all kinds of like insects and all that, lizards and all that used to roam around. But that was normal part of life, So that was my schooling, but every December, which was the longest 1 month holiday, first 2 or 3 years, we all used to go together, my uncle and the family. We used to go to Nairobi. So that's the time I saw my parents for 1 month. Then January, you go back and...
Do you remember the first time, obviously after you went to Salaam, the first time you went back home? Do you remember what it was like seeing your mum and dad for the first time?
Yeah, it was just great, I remember I didn't sleep the whole night, the night before we were going to travel, because we were going to go to Nairobi to see mom and dad. And the journey was, again, as I said, by bus, and it used to take... at that time, it used to take 2 full days. So you were traveling 2 full days, and the third morning you reached Nairobi. And the roads were not tar roads, they were murram roads. So that then became the trend that every December we used to go. But the time to come back in January, the mood would be low. Used to cry, not in open. The only place to cry was a toilet. We used to go in every morning, would probably cry. You wanted to go back. Couldn't tell the uncle or auntie that I want to go back. And I'm sure it was the same with my sister. But then after I was there, so I must have been around 10, 11, and my sister was about probably 14, 15. And she suddenly, one day, this is when I was 12, she got a letter. My uncle got a letter from my dad and it was written that they had what you call had my sister future husband. They'd arranged marriage, they'd arranged the match. My sister had no idea, not seen, and so the letter came. So my uncle gave the letter to my sister, and I remember we were sitting on the bed. By the way, it was only 2-bedroom flat. And when I mean 2-bedroom, those were the rooms. There's not like a lounge or anything. 2-bedroom flat in which initially 4 of my uncle's children, my cousins, my uncle and auntie, 6, and me and my sister, 8 of us used to stay in there. So there was a bed in one room, there were another bed in the second room, and another like a bunk bed. And then at night, you just do patharis. So and there was only one kitchen, one bathroom, and one toilet. So that's where I grew up, basically. But coming back to my sister, she read the letter, and she just threw the letter to me, and I read it. It was all in Gujarati at that time, and I was too young to sort of, to say anything or to, and my sister cried. But then that was a time that arranged marriages took place at a very early age. Yeah, you got married a bit later on, but it was arranged.
How old was your sister at the time?
I think she was around 15, I think. And then at the end of that year, I'm not quite sure for what reason, when we went to Nairobi in December, my sister stayed back and I came back. So that's how I ended up in Dar es Salaam. That's how and my uncle, he was strict, but he was strict in the sense that he was a very simple man. And he had his routine. He would get up at 4 in the morning, go for a walk on the beachfront, come back. He had his set sort of, and he used to work for customs. So by 8 o'clock he'll be out, 4 o'clock he'll be home. As soon as he was home, he made sure that we did some homework. He made us, to learn the tables, to read, to do mathematics. He would spend a good hour or hour and a half after all of us. And that's where, in a way, I got that basic not knowledge, but the basic foundation of English, mathematics, which was very good.
So you became a pharmacist later on in life, but back then, what were your dreams, what were your aspirations back then?
No aspirations at all. It was a very simple life. As I said, the week would be, whilst growing up from 7 till 16, the normal would be you get up in the morning. I mean, my uncle obviously taught us swimming, so at the weekend we would go with him in the early morning, to swim in the sea. He is the one. We had a neighbor there who was with a ladies' society called Mahila Mandal. And at the age of 7, at a Diwali time, that Mahila Mandal was just holding like a children's party. And they had one little building, and on the top was a terrace. So that's where they were holding a party. And she knew my uncle, and she said, "Why don't you send the kids to this party?" So we went there, and that was my first party, and it's so enjoyable because you're so many kids. And then at that time, she told my uncle that they are starting Shishu Kunj from next week up there. So my uncle enrolled me and my sister. That's how I, came into Shishu Kunj. And I remember in Dubai, who was the founder member of Shishu Kunj. He had started Shishu Kunj in Karachi at that time, before partition. About 10, 12 years before partition he had started. And obviously after partition, he moved to India, and then from India he came to Dar es Salaam, and that's when he started. I think it was 1955 that he started. And that's the legacy of Shishu Kunj that I started, and which really had an impact throughout my life.
So just before Shishu Kunj, what kind of a child were you? Were you a new child? Were you energetic?
No, I was a very quiet child, very shy child, very obedient. Whatever I was told, I would do, Obviously, even though nowadays you won't even think of, in this day and age, of asking 7-year onwards kid to go and get things, go walking alone and all that. Well, that was norm at that time. So as a child, as I said, I was very shy. And even though I was with my cousins, but the two of my cousins, the elder cousin, she got married, I think, about a year or so after I went to Dar es Salaam. And then after 1 or 2 years, my second cousin, elder cousin, he went to India for studies. So then eventually it was me and my youngest cousin. Two of us were left, because even my third cousin, then she did her GCSE, and then my dad called her to Nairobi to do, at that time, I think she did some secretarial course in Nairobi. So eventually it was just two of us left. And then my uncle retired in 1961, I think. So I was about 14 at that time. So my uncle retired and he was going to go to India to settle. And my dad asked me, shall I get a school here in Nairobi? And I was scared because at that time, the standard of English in Kenya was higher than in Tanzania. And I told my dad, I said, no, it's only 2 years left now for my GCSE. Let me finish that. So my uncle had left to go to India, but before that, about 2 years before, my eldest cousin, who had gone to India, and then obviously she was married in India, and they had settled in India.
What was her name? What was your cousin's name?
Ushaben. Yeah. So she had, and my brother-in-law, Rohit Bhai, he, by profession, he was a lawyer. So they had settled in Ahmedabad. And they were there till, and my dad then wanted them to come over to Africa. But the law at that time was that if you were born in Kenya or East Africa at that time, if you were a boy and if you got a girl from outside, you could bring her back for settlement, permanent settlement. But if you were a girl who had married a boy, you could not bring him back. So my dad had a very good friend in Tanzania by the name of Karamji Jivanji. And Karamji Jivanji was very much in the government, and he was the speaker of at that time it was still Tanganyika. He was the speaker of in the parliament, and it was British rule at that time. So my dad then told him that, look, this is not right. You need to get this law changed. And eventually, through this Karamji Jivanji, he then took it up in the parliament and they changed the law. So that's how my elder sister then could come to. So they were there when my uncle had retired and going to India. And so I stayed with them in the same house. You know, my uncle left and my cousin and my brother-in-law, they took over it was a rented flat. So they took that over. So I stayed for 2 years with them until I finished my GCSE. And my whole, call it extracurricular activity, was Shishukunj. Every evening we would go to Shishukunj. At that time used to meet at a public library which was called T.B. Shet Library. So they had a little ground where we used to play. And
was this in the same campus or area where you were living, or was it quite distant?
No, I mean it was about a 5-minute walk. It was so it was all within distance, and as I said, we all used to just go by ourselves, come by ourselves. But that's where then I got more and more involved in the daily, because that's what Shishikun was, that you join Shishikun from a young age. As you go, they start giving you responsibilities to do things for the organization, and that was my life. And then at the age of 16, after giving GCSE, you give your exams at that time, November, December time. And then you wait 3 months for your results, because the papers used to come from Cambridge. It was a Cambridge board. So they used to send the papers back over to UK to be marked. So we used to have a gap of the 3 months before we get the results. So after giving that, I went to Nairobi. That was the first time ever after I had left at the age of 7 that I stayed in Nairobi for more than a month. And then while I got my results, and to my surprise, I don't know, I wasn't a brilliant child, or it was just a hard slog. And I think up to the age of, up to standard 10, it used to go from standard 1 to standard 12 at that time. So up to standard 10, I was just an average sort of in the class. And at 10, I was just about good enough for them. They used to have just this one class that would jump the year. So you don't do 11 because they think you are good enough. So they used to jump you from 10 to straight 12. And I don't know how I was in, my number was in there, so I jumped into 12. And I thought, and the result you would get was either first class, second class, or third class. I never dreamt that I would get a first class. So when the results came, even I was surprised, and in the family, everybody was just, overjoyed, because nobody in the family had got that. So in my mind, I thought I was going to go to India for further studies. Everybody used to go to India, and you used to travel by ship at that time. Aircraft fares you just could not afford. So my father said, and then next thing I know, I was in Nairobi. Okay? My father comes and says, "Are you going to go to UK?" And I said, "What?" No idea, absolutely what I was going to do. I didn't know. I didn't know what subjects to take. And my father said, "You're going to do physics, chemistry, and zoology." And I said, "Okay." And thus was decided by my father's I wouldn't say very good friend. I mean, they were Patels, but the person that decided for me, his father and my father were in Lamu in 1930s. his father was a teacher. And my father was obviously with this Smith Mackenzie. And when they were very young, their father passed away. So in a way, my father and my mother gave very good support to their mother. So ever since then, it's not like a friend, it's like a family. So even today, they consider me as brother, and I consider them as my elder brother and sister. So he was working in the education department in Kenya at that time, and he was in charge of students going overseas. So my father and him, they sat in the coffee house and thinking, now what to do with me. And he said, okay, we send him to Norwich. He'll do these subjects. So that's what was decided, that I'm going to I have no idea. I still had no, that whether I was interested or not interested.
It wasn't your decision
at all. So I was told, okay, you're good. But then my father said, okay, but before you go to England, you better go to India and see your grandmother. My grandmother. My grandfather had already passed away. So so I went in the ship. He came to leave me in Mombasa. Before that, I had done 2 trips to India in the ship. And it was, again, in the ship, it was either first class, second class, or third class. None of us could afford anything else but third class, So the 2 occasions I traveled in third class. And on this occasion, my father, because I was traveling on my own, he had put me in second class. And he had told me, he had written to my cousin Mama, who was in Mumbai, that he will come and receive you here. My cousin Mama had never seen me. He had seen me probably when I was very little.
What's his name?
My cousin Mama was Indravadan. And he said, he'll come and receive you. At that time, the ship would come and dock. It used to be 7 days journey between Mombasa and Bombay. And I traveled in June, July, which is the roughest season in the sea. And that's the first time ever I experienced the waves, being about 15, 20 feet high, and the ship sort of, going up and down. Luckily, I was okay. I mean, I didn't have any issues with the tummy. And when we reached Bombay after 7 days, I only had 1 suitcase. And at that time, the Bombay custom people were really nasty, because they knew people were coming from Africa. They had a little bit of money. And at that time, the tendency was, everybody's mindset was that you are in Africa just temporarily. Eventually, you are going to go back to India. So people used to take things from Africa to India and live in their homes in India. And the customs people knew, so that, to get the duty, and more than the duty, obviously to get the back money, But I just had a little suitcase, and So instead of expecting, and it would take anything from 2 hours to 4 hours for you to pass through customs after landing.
That's a long time.
So I went down, and within 20 minutes, I was done. And at that time, people could come right up to the customs building, which had like a mesh, and you can see through. So I paraded myself from one end to another end. I didn't know what my mama looked like, thinking that he would call me. And I did that for about half an hour, and nobody did. And then I said to myself, now what do I do? And I don't know what came into me, or I took my bag outside. Taxi guy is there. I told him I had heard before, and even when I was small, that whenever we went from Kenya or Dar es Salaam to Bombay, in Bombay we used to stay at a guest house. And then we used to talk. So I knew the name of the guest house. So I told him, oh, take me there. So he took me there, and then I said, just wait, let me go and ask. So I went up and I asked, I want a room. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought maybe by then somehow my mama will, and they said, we haven't got any space. I was 16. So I came down and I said, what do I do? So next thing I said, take me to the central station. Thinking back, I mean, the taxi drivers had a very bad reputation, But I must have been so lucky that taxi driver took me to the station, dropped me there. I was waiting out there, and then one of the porters came. And I told him, I said, I want to catch a train to Gujarat, to this Ahmedabad. And he said, are you by yourself? I said, yeah. So he said, the train, this was around about 11, 12. He said, the train doesn't go until about 8 in the evening. So I said, okay, let me buy the ticket. So he said, okay, I'll help you. And you had also heard stories about porters, to rip you off. And again, it must have been my luck that I got an honest porter. And he told me, he says, look, you're on your own. Come with me, we'll buy the ticket. We bought the ticket. Then he took me to a bench, and he said, okay, you sit here. I'll come back for you, but have you eaten? I said, no. So he said, okay, I'll wait here with your bag. You go and eat. I didn't even think that, he might run off with a bag. So I went and, got something to eat. I came back. Then he says, okay. He says, I'll go to work. You sit here, don't move from here. I will come back at about 7 or 7:30. So I just sat there till then. And as I said, my good luck, he came. Yeah. He took me, he put me on the train. Even then I was, as soon as he put me, I gave him some money, and then I quickly asked the people, sitting next. I said, is this train going into Ahmedabad? They said, yeah. I said, will it stop at Mehmedabad? He said, yes. And then the Mehmedabad was going to come about 5 o'clock in the morning. Whole night I didn't sleep, because you had heard these stories that in the train, if you fall off to sleep, somebody will walk off you with your bag, and And 5 o'clock in the morning, I got off the train. There was no platform. You just jump off. And I had heard about this first person that I said who took my uncle first time to Africa. He had by then long retired and gone back to that Mehmedabad, and he had built a house near the station, and it was called Tanganyika House. So I knew that. So I came out of the station, and I knew it was just because of the stories that people had told. So I walked there, and I saw the house, and I knocked, and he came, and he didn't recognize me. He said, "Kaun?" હું મહેશ. કેવી રીતના આવ્યો અહીંયા? મેં કીધું ટ્રેનમાં. એ કે ત્યાં બોમ્બેમાં બધા તને ગોતે છે. They are looking for you. They are all worried. એ કે તારા મામાએ અહીંયા આગળ તને, looking for you. So I said, oh, I was there, nobody, so I just took a train and came, as if it was normal. And quickly then my mama, Mehmedabad જ રહેતા હતા. He called him, and they quickly then sent, at that time, not phone call, but because they were all worried, how do they tell my parents that I'm missing? So that was my adventure of India. So after India, then obviously I went back, and at the age of 16, in August 1964, I came here. As I said, everything was arranged for me to go to. And then another relative of us, he had settled in London about 2 years or 3 years before I came in 64. And everything was by letter writing. So my dad had written to him that I'm coming to UK. And at that time, the thing was that you don't stay with anybody or anything like that. So my dad had told me that he has written to this person called Asmukh Bhai. But he wasn't quite sure whether he'll come to receive me or what. So before coming to UK, British Council in Nairobi used to run courses for students coming for the first time to UK. And it used to be a 2 days or 3 days event in Nairobi. So my dad had put me on that. And then they sort of try and give you exactly what happens, that when you land at Heathrow, then you take a coach to Victoria from Victoria, then either you go to the British Council and ask them for help to find accommodation, you know. So that was in my mind, that is what I was going to do. And it was quite scary, sort of, you know. So when the plane landed, at that time, it was only what is now Terminal 3. That was the only building in 1964. A small building. And at that time, the people could come on the balcony and, you know, watch the plane. So when the plane was taxiing nearby, and I was looking out of the window, and you see all these white men, you know, for the first time doing manual jobs. You'd never seen a white, because Africa, they were the rulers. So they were always in top positions. And so I was looking out of the window, and then I was looking at the terminal, and then I looked up. And I saw a familiar figure. And that was the Rasmukh boy. And I said, thank God, that I didn't have to take going from Terminal 3, taking a coach, going to Victoria and all that. So I stayed, he picked me up, he was staying in Golders Green. So we came to his house, and that course that I did in Nairobi, they had also taught you the etiquettes of, you know, staying with a family or staying with a landlady, how you should behave, how you should do, you know. And the one thing they had also said in the etiquettes is when you are, how to hold a fork and knife. Had never held fork and knife. How to eat, having a bath once a week, all that sort of, you know. So I went with this uncle, and in my mind, you know, you have to have these etiquettes, or, you know. But after the first, I mean, it was Indian food, so the food-wise it was fine. After the first day, every morning, when I was 7 years old, I used to cry, where have I come? You know, everything new, you know, completely different environment, everything. Then, and after, during that week, he had introduced me to his friend who also had come with him at that time. He was an accountant. And his son at that time was about, I think, 12. So this relative told him, I knew them as well because they used to be in Dar es Salaam. So when I was small, I knew them. So he told his son one day to take me around London. And he was 12, so he, with his friends, some English friend and me, now instead of speaking Gujarati, you have to speak in English, converse in English all the time. So he took me around London, and then lunchtime, a sandwich, and I said, how can I eat a sandwich? Lunchtime, So that was my first sandwich. But then he took me around, and then after a week or 10 days, my relative then he got me an overcoat, winter overcoat. This was summertime. But he said, you'll need a winter overcoat. So we went into Burton's, had made to measure, heavy overcoat done, got some winter clothes. And so my suitcase, with whatever little clothes I had come with, became quite heavy. And then he came to drop me at Leopold Street Station. So he put me on the train, and I had this suitcase I could hardly carry. And then I had one BOSE bag at that time, the airline bag. And then I had this heavy overcoat, and then another thing. At least I was on the train, and all the way on the train I kept on asking, Norwich? Is it Norwich? Norwich? Eventually I came to the Norwich station. The luck was I was on the last compartment and the exit was in the front. So I got out of, struggling, trying to, and then right at the end I could see a guy with a turban. And I said, with an English guy. And then they were standing there. And he was on the same train, but obviously, but the thing was, I had met him in Nairobi in that course. Somebody was talking to me and he said, where are you going for your A-levels? And I said, Norwich. And he said, hold on, there's somebody else going to Norwich. And he introduced me to this thing and said, he's going to Norwich as well. That's the only time I met him. And then I saw him there. And they saw me struggling, with all this. So both of them walked, on the platform, took the bag. And the person that came to receive was my tutor. At that time, they came, overseas students, they came to pick you up. So he took both of us and he said, let me take you to the college, enroll you, and then find you digs to stay. And I'm wondering, what's this digs? Never heard that word. Eventually, then I probably somewhere to stay. So we did that. Then he took us around in his car to these different landladies, and none of them had space. And by then it was almost 4 o'clock. And obviously we had not eaten or anything. So then we found this landlady, and she was taking 4 students. She already had 1, and we came. So he told her that they've not eaten, so if you can organize something. So she said, sure. So he left us there. And there was this thing, his name is Manjit. Even till today, we are in touch. He stays in Chingford now. So she said, okay, I'll organize. Next thing we know, she went out, got fish and chips, put it on the plate. And she was staying next door, and from the back door, she had the connection to her. So she left everything and went. And I'm looking at that and I said, how do I eat this? Never eaten fish in my life. Meat, I had only eaten once, chicken, and that also my dad had forced me. My dad was a complete vegetarian. Every one of us were vegetarian. But when I was in Nairobi before coming, my dad says, you better eat meat. Because he knew that what are you going to eat there? So he had forced me. So once only I had eaten chicken in Nairobi, and whole night I hadn't slept. But here, now this thing was here, fish and chips, never eaten fish. And so I looked at the thing, and I had heard in that course that said, you never leave anything in your plate. It should be, So as soon as I just took the fish and put in his plate. I said, you eat this. I just... So, yeah, I was vegetarian until then. Then gradually, after I think a month or 2 months, I had no choice but to start. So there were 4 of us with the landlady. There was one from Aden, 2 of us were from Kenya, and one was from Uganda. So 3 of us were Gujarati and 1 Singh. So that's how, and I think it was also a blessing. Then in a way you are amongst your people, and then you help each other to settle in, And so yeah, so that's how, then after the first year we separated. For the second year, to go wherever. So I stayed with one landlady. This friend, Manjit, he stayed with another person from Aden, but they stayed like in a one-room flat where you have to cook and everything. With the landlady provides you the breakfast and dinner. Lunch is you have at the college, and you're allowed bath once a week. So then, after a month, then we started having showers at the college. And yeah, that's how my college life then started. And then there were a few more Kenyan students as well as from Uganda. So in all, we were somewhere around 20 Asian students in the college, which made life a little bit easier to get into, the English way of life.
Did you get into any trouble there, or was it kind of plain sailing in college?
No. I mean, as I said, we were all good. And there was like an international club where this person had set up, and where on Saturday evenings we all used to meet. And they used to have like a social, a little disco. Hadn't danced in my lifetime. That's how it started, the normal college life.
How did you find the education compared to obviously what it was like in Salaam? Was that like
completely different, because here the lecturer would come, just give you a lecture, and you were on your own. We used to spend, you couldn't stay at home. At the obviously weekends, we on Sunday we had no choice but to stay at home. But on Saturday there was a public library which was open. So we used to spend the whole day there, take our books, stay there because it was warm. Here, if we stayed, we had to put in money. Feed the meter. Everywhere we used to walk, because I used to get 25 pounds from my parents, out of which we used to pay £5 to the landlady. Lunches used to cost us in those days like 10 pence. We used to walk to the college, which was about a 20-minute walk. Didn't think of taking bus. And the funny thing was, whenever we used to walk, me and especially the Manjit, and there was this coachloads of young students going in the morning, and they would all turn back and look because they had never seen a person with a turban. And I mean, and then in my third year, I repeated the A level. I did repeated one subject because I didn't get the grades to go into medicine. So I stayed one more year, and so did this Manjit, and so did, there were another 2, 3. We repeated one more year. So in Norwich, I spent 3 years from 1964 to 1967. But in the third year, we stayed in this like 1-bedroom flat where me and Manjit, we shared that. And then when I got the result, I still fell short of the grade to get into medicine. So one of my friends' cousin was in Sheffield at that time, and he used to come to Norwich because he had done his A-levels in Norwich as well. His name was Dave Somers. So he told me, the cousin's name was Sat Somers. And he told me that, look, why don't you apply for physiology in Sheffield? Take it for 1 year, and at the end of the year, first year, you'll be able to change into medicine. So I said, okay, fine. So in the clearance, I applied for physiology.
Just before we get to that point, so before you said you weren't, when you came over, you didn't know what you were studying necessarily.
Yeah.
At what point did you know that you wanted to go into medicine? Did that just happen?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, in those days, it was either medicine, engineering, or arts. So in my mind, it was, medicine. And so I took up this, and I had applied, and I in fact, the first offer I got was from St. Andrews University. And I almost accepted it when this guy said, come to Sheffield. So then I chose Sheffield, and I ended up in Sheffield to do physiology. And in Sheffield, I did the first year, and then I went to the dean of the medical faculty to ask him if I could change over. And he said, you know what? You're 1 day late. So-and-so, I forget his name, an English guy, Irish chap he was, from my same physiology, had gone a day earlier. And because he had gone before me, they took him. So he told me, he said, look, finish second year and then apply again. And So I did second year, And then towards the end, I said, I've done 2 years, I might as well finish 1 more year and then change over to medicine. So I finished 3 years, and before I had gone and seen the dean, and he'll say, he said, yeah, I'll let you know once all the results are. And then by then, I had to come down to London because my younger cousin's sister, she had come to UK. I think it was about a year or 2 years before this. And at that time I had settled her in Wisbech because that is a place, my friend's sister was there, so that she would get company, and they were doing like a very basic, original, computer course. Not even a computer, it was called something else. So she was in Wisby. And then when I finished my university in Sheffield, my younger sister was coming to London to do a secretarial course. So she was going to be in London.
But up until this point, you hadn't seen family for years?
No. When I came here in 1964, for the first 3 years, I had not seen the family. After the third year, I saw them. And so I said, my younger sister is coming. I have to find flat for them, for this, my cousin's sister. So I came to London, and then I was contemplating, now what do I do with myself? I've done a degree. So then my other friends were all accountants, and so they suggested, why don't you go into accounts? So I said, yeah, okay, yeah. So I started applying to the firms, and then I met somebody who said, you are interested in science, why don't you do pharmacy? So I rang up a school of pharmacy in London. I rang up the dean, and this was in about August time. And I told him, I got this degree from Sheffield University. I want to do pharmacy. So he told me, he said, okay, come tomorrow for an interview. So I went for an interview, and first thing he said, I'm happy to offer you a place. I've already spoken with your tutor in Sheffield, and all the report is good. So that's how I ended up doing pharmacy. Not of my own choice, just by chance. And then after the first week, my friend who was becoming a doctor in Sheffield rang me. His name was Shiraz. And he rang me, he says, where are you? He says, the dean is looking for you. He said, you got a place here. So I rang up the dean, and he said, I've got a place for you, but the only thing is, originally when I was finishing my physiology degree, he told me you can have 6 months off because for the first 6 months you'll be doing whatever you already covered. So you can have 6 months off and then start on the course. But then he said the syllabus has changed, so he can't give me 6 months off, so I have to start straight away. And I sort of said, 6 months, I go back to Sheffield, these two sisters are here in London. I got to be in London. So I decided, I said, no, I'll do pharmacy. So that's how I ended up doing pharmacy. Yeah, so that's how I ended up in in London, and I finished my pharmacy degree. So when I finished my exams, my mom and dad had come over, and my results hadn't come out yet. And my dad sort of had said, "Oh, I'll get you a Mercedes, when you get your degree." And you don't even think of anything. And my dad and mom were here, and this was 1973, summer of 1973. And it was a brilliant summer, one of the hottest summer. And I think just a few months before they came, I think in my last term at the university, I had given my driving test. And I'd passed my driving test just about 3 months before they came. And before that, when I started in Sheffield, my university, I had gone to Kenya. And my dad had said, "Oh, do you want to drive?" So I said, "Yeah, I'll take some lessons." So I took some lessons in Kenya there, but Kenya, at that time, you could give money and get a license. So I took a few lessons and got the license, what we call Magendo license now. And and my dad had just bought a Mercedes about a year or 2 years before then in Kenya. And it was a big thing at that time. Yeah. And then my dad told one of our family friends, let him drive the Mercedes. And I was sort of absolutely, scared. Big car. I haven't, basically I had only taken 4 or 5 lessons. And this other person then slowly sort of, in a way taught me how to drive. So that's how I had my Kenyan license. And then I came here. I gave a test in Sheffield, and I failed. And then I didn't give any. Then until about 1973 in London, I gave the test and passed. And then I said, oh, my parents are coming, so I need a car. So I bought this small Mini for about 200 pounds, and 200 pounds was a lot of money at that time. And when my mom and dad came, and the summer was brilliant, so I took them all around, around sort of like Brighton, Leicester, all around London. And then one day, in the meantime, in 1972, the person I had mentioned who had decided what I was going to do A-levels, in a way, my brother, they had migrated to UK, and he was looking for a post office, and my dad was around, so he respected my dad, so he took my dad around. So we were all going around on this particular day in the Mini, and then we came I brought them to central London, to Russell Square, to what's called Senate House, the University of London. And I stopped by and I told them, wait, I'm just coming. And there was a notice board. I went and looked at it, and then came back, and I told my dad, I said, I've passed my pharmacy. And both of them, he said, all this time you're not even saying that you are going to see for your results. You're driving around. And my dad sort of told that brother of mine, he said, I told him that I'll buy him a Mercedes. So I said, I don't want a Mercedes. What am I going to do with a Mercedes? Yeah. But yeah, so then at that time, he went back to Kenya, and I started my internship, 1-year internship in Cricklewood. But before that, yes, it was at that time when he came. This is in 73. He had gone. No, I was doing my internship. So the following year he came again, 74. And he was with my relative, that Hasmukh Bhai, who had first come to pick me up. So he was with him, and that Hasmukh Bhai was in property business, going into auctions, buying properties, doing them up. And so he used to take my dad, come with me. So my dad went to this auction, and there was this one property, and my dad was listening, and there were this house, which was in Harrow, and they were putting the bids, and there were two people, I think, bidding, and it went up to I don't know, £6,000, or eventually it went up to £7,000. And suddenly my dad tells my that relative, Hasmukh Bhai, He said, put in a bid, 7.5. And my relative, being in the business, obviously not seeing the house, nothing, and how can you put a bid? And he told him, no, put in. So he put in the bid 7.5 and got accepted. And at that time, I was doing my internship in Cricklewood with a Jewish person. And I got a phone call. And he said, oh, can you come with a checkbook? And I said, why? So I bought a house. I said, what? He said, we need to pay the deposit. So I had to leave the work, and the auction was in one of the hotels in Marble Arch. So I went there, he paid the deposit, and then I went back to work. And my uncle and them, no, I think you had to pay the whole amount because they got the keys, yeah. They went to see the house. And then that relative said, thank goodness, the house was clean. It was just like done up, painted, central heating. It was in Harrow on the Hill, on the main road, 4-bedroom house. So lucky that's how then I ended up staying in Harrow on the Hill. So I had a house, my dad had bought that even before I had got married. So then, after completing my internship in 1974, obviously I was staying at that house for about 6 months. Then I started doing locuming just to get experience, of being a pharmacist. So I was doing locuming. I did it for about 3 months, and then in November time I went. My dad said, I was almost 26 by then. And my dad said, come to Nairobi. Obviously I knew why, that it's time to get married. So after about 3 months of locum, I went to Nairobi. But the place where I did the locum, where I did my internship, my previous internship, who was just finishing when I then starting, she was a lady called Rani. And she went to do locuming in Hackney for some another Jewish person. And I think when I finished my internship, and whilst I was doing this 3 months of locuming, she rang me and she said, I need you to cover me. She needed to go to Malaysia. That's where she was from. And I said, okay, fine. So I covered her for about a month or so. And then she came back, and I then went to Nairobi. And obviously my father, then all this started about getting married. And at that time, obviously it had to be an arranged marriage. Uh, so I told him what my requirement. I said somebody who has studied in English speaking, because I knew whoever I got married to come back to UK. So my brother-in-law, my youngest sister and my brother-in-law were in Nairobi at that time. And so they sort of introduced one or two, girls to go and see. Nothing. Then we...
What happened with those? They just didn't, obviously they didn't work out.
I mean, you just go and talk. Only then, if you are interested, then you have another meeting. For there was no interest. So then we went to Mombasa in December time, or end of November time, 1974. And we went to Mombasa for a holiday, my younger brother-in-law and sister. And they had a friend in Mombasa. So we stayed with them. And he sort of suggested one or two there in Mombasa. And I said, okay, because at the back of the mind was that I knew that then my dad and said, let's go to India. That's what everybody did. So we saw this one in Mombasa, and it seemed okay. And then I was almost sort of, in the meantime, Bina's dad, obviously we knew the family because they all come from the same community and from the same village in India, Ahmedabad. So we knew him. So he came to know that I was in Mombasa because the person we were staying with, he knew him as well. So he sent a message to my brother-in-law that his daughter is there if we are interested. So, but she was in India at that time, studying. So my brother-in-law said, let's just go and meet. So I said, okay, we'll meet. So we met at a lighthouse in Mombasa. And he gave some photographs and all that. And I told my brother-in-law that, look, it's fine with a photograph, but until you see in person. So I said, look, tell him that we are going to go to India in 2 weeks or 3 weeks' time. So we will see, we'll meet her there. So he said, okay, fine. So we came to India, and when I came to India, obviously my mamas were in India. So they had lined up quite a few girls there. Some of our relatives were there, they had lined up. And at that time, also, you see, your two horoscopes had to meet as well. You know. So, and I couldn't say no to my mama. So I said, okay, I'll go along. And then I went along, and then I would say, no, not interested, not interested, sort of, one of them had come from, I think, Malaysia, my mama's friend or something. And they had come from Malaysia, and she, because I said, okay, obviously there should be English, sort of, proficiency in English. And so we went to see her, and then he came out, and then my mama asked me, he said, what do you think? I said, nah, મને interest નથી. તો કે હા મને પણ બૈરી જેવી લાગી. Meaning that she was all matured, So I said, thank goodness I don't have to explain anymore, And in the same way, there was this relative's house, and it was the relative's wife's brother's daughter. And they had brought her. And same thing, I wasn't interested. And I knew they would ask me, what do you think? And I was just about contemplating, how do I reply? So that relative's son, at that time he was about 14, 15, he was sitting there and he was watching and everything. So even before I could answer, he said, આની સાથે તો કંઈ કરાય, આ તો સૌ બોચા જેવી હતી. So, and that was their relatives, So I said, okay, I don't know to answer here. But then a meeting was set up to see her. So we met, and my mom and dad came with me, and she was staying in a hostel. So we went there, then we talked, and then I said, yeah, we'll have a second meeting. And second meeting we had over a little bit longer period. And then, I said, yeah, fine. And she said, fine. So within a week, or within 2 weeks of seeing and meeting, the marriage was arranged. And her dad and mom had to fly in from Mombasa. My sisters who were in Kenya, they came in. So on 21st February 1975, we got married. And then at the same time, my cousin, that little cousin sister, who was in London, and because we are all joint family. So my uncle then, in the meantime, he didn't like India, so my dad called him, he said, just come to Nairobi. So my uncle's family, my family, we are all staying together in Nairobi. And my cousin brother, who had come down to study in India, after doing like equivalent of A-levels, at that time it was called inter science, something like that. After that, he said no, he didn't want to pursue any further. So my dad called him back. He said, okay, come down to Nairobi, and the business was doing fairly well by then. It was struggling in early 1950s. But then after middle of 60s, and it was doing fairly well. So my dad said, just come and join the business. So he was there, my uncle was there. So in 1974, when my dad and my mom and myself were coming, he asked, my uncle asked to see if something can be arranged for my cousin sister as well. And she was in London at the time. So my dad said, look, why don't you come as well? So even my uncle was in here. And then my dad asked around, and then he found out that there were people that she could see, boys that she could see. So they asked, for her to come over. So she was there as well. So that during my marriage, on my Mehndi night, then my dad had arranged from my elder sister's father-in-law for my cousin to see somebody. So in the middle of that Ras Dandiya, I took her, and she saw this person who was in Rajasthan, but they had come down, obviously, too. And then my marriage took place, and then we went on like a honeymoon to Kashmir. And then we were going to do like a triangle, Delhi. So when I came back to Delhi, I got this phone call, come back to Ahmedabad, because the marriage was arranged for my cousin now. So my dad had arranged all that. So this cousin sister got married. They are here now. So yeah, that's and then she was doing her degree at the university in Ahmedabad, and I told her that you've done 2 years, so you might as well do one. Even though we are getting married, you stay and do 1 more year and finish your degree. So yeah, in 75, then we came back to Mombasa, because then it was a vacation. And then in August, we came to London in 1975. And then she went back to Ahmedabad to finish that 1 year. And then in 76, she came back. But then, when I went back in 1975 after getting married in September, in August, when we landed in London, and the very next day I got a phone call from that intern who was a pharmacist, who was in Hackney, for whom I did that 1 month locuming before I went to Kenya. She rang me and she said, I need you. I said, well, he said, I have to go urgently. Rani. I have to go urgently to Malaysia, and I need you to cover me for this 2 months. So I said, okay, I can do it, but I said I can do it after about 2 weeks, after she has gone back, after Bina has gone back to, India. So she said, yeah, that's fine. So I said, okay, I can do it, but I said I can do it after about 2 weeks, after she has gone back, after Bina has gone back to, India. So she said, yeah, that's fine. So I said, okay, I can do it, but I said I can do it after about 2 weeks, after she has gone back to, India. So she said, yeah, that's fine. So I started again locuming in Hackney. And when I went there, she said, you know what, this place is up for sale, because they were opening another pharmacy in West End, in Marylebone High Street. I said, no, I don't know. I mean, I hardly had any experience of running a shop. And she said, you know, you worked here, it's a very good shop, if you know. So I said, I'll ask my dad. So I asked my dad, and he said, okay, send the accounts and whatever. and they were asking for £40,000. Yeah. At that time, goodwill. So my dad came, and we had little funds. So he then sat down and negotiated it down to, I think, about 35 or something like that. And that guy, the person who was selling, Mr. Conway, he had already started refitting really this high-class pharmacy in West End, Marylebone High Street. So this Rani was going to go with him as the pharmacist. So she was involved in setting up and all that. So I ended up in Hackney. So I was traveling from Harrow on the hill to Hackney. And then when my dad came and we negotiated, it took about 3-4 months. So 76, yeah, in 1977, we got the pharmacy eventually. Yeah. And it was scary because all I was a pharmacist, not running a business. And luckily, that Mrs. Conway, the wife of Mr. Conway, she was like a manager there. So we had negotiated for her to stay for about 3 months until the Christmas. So she then in that helped us buying and all that. So she saw us through the first Christmas. And then she was gone because they had opened the other pharmacy. And by then, Bina had come back, settled in London in 1977. And yeah, both of us not experienced. And that's how I ended up with a pharmacy in London, in Hackney. Or that's where my future was written. And it was all started from Cricklewood because I met Rani there, and from there on. So let me go a little bit back to 68 Lowlands Road, the house that my father bought in auction. The house was bought roughly about a year and a half before I got married. So it was a 4-bedroom house. So the first 2 years, I had a friend. His name was Muhammad Jafar, and he he was from a very poor background, from Dar es Salaam. And he did not have anywhere to stay. So since I was alone in the house, he asked me if he can come and stay for a few weeks until he finds something. So I said, yeah, why not? So he came and he stayed there. And he stayed well over what he thought he would. And he then got married and moved out of the house. But before he moved out of the house, I had another friend called, we call him Balu, but his name was Balkrishna Velji. Yeah, we did pharmacy together. And he did not have I'm not quite sure. I think I told him he was looking for somewhere to stay. And this after he had finished his pharmacy. And so I said, look, I've got space. You can come and stay with me. So he came and stayed with me. So there were two of them staying, plus myself. And then this Muhammad got married and he moved out. And this Balkrishna, he was there. And in the meantime, I got married. For a year, Balkrishna, this Muhammad, and myself were there in the house. And then when Bina finally came back for good in 1976, Balkrishna was there. And then another friend of mine, very good friend of mine, Shirish Shah. We spent a lot of time together whilst at university and even after university, and had lots of fun going in the city and going and seeing plays and, going to picnics and whatnot. So he had a friend who was with him at London School of Economics, who they had finished, and he was becoming a lawyer, and his name was Ramesh Wala. And he asked me, he said he's struggling at the moment, he's not finding a place, so can you accommodate him for? So I said, okay, fine. So now there was this Ramesh Wala, the Balu Velji, and myself, three of us. And then when I got married and came back, and then when finally Bina came back, so at that time, these two were still there, at 68 Lowlands Road. And when then after about 2-3 months, they decided, both of them, that they will find a place together. So Balu and Rameshwala, they found a place in Ealing, a flat in Ealing. But one day, the cooking was like, sometimes Bina would do it, sometimes Balu would do it. Sort of, whoever came in the house first would do something. So one day Bina was cooking and Balu was there, and Ramesh wasn't in the house yet. And it was a Sunday, and next day obviously going work, and you say, oh, Monday morning again, like sort of, So Bina said in Gujarati, કાલથી પાછા આપણે મોચી ના મોચી. Now, I just sort of, didn't say anything, change the subject or something. And then whilst we were alone, I told Bina, I said, you know what you said, ke kalthi apne mochi na mochi. That's a saying in Gujarati. That means, from tomorrow, you are at a grind. So, I said, you are telling in front of Balu, and a good job Ramesh wasn't there. Their profession by Bab Dada's profession is mochi. They are mochi, But anyway, so people then used to call this 68 Lowlands Road as Gandhi Ashram. Because a lot of people have stayed. Because even after, I'll come to that a bit later, but then Bina's brother came and stayed there, and we weren't there in Lowlands Road. At that time, then we were back in Nairobi. But even there, he stayed with another 4 friends, and a lot of people used to come there, Elokana friends, have parties and all that. So everybody called it a Gandhi Ashram. It's only later that I realized that even Chaganbhai, એક દિવસ અમે આમ જ વાત કરતા હતા, અને તો કે છગનભાઈ મને કે I used to come અહીંયા એક Lowlands રોડમાં in my student days, અને ત્યાં એનો એક ફ્રેન્ડ હતા, એનું નામ હું ભૂલી ગયો, who was a Pulin's friend, who was staying in Lowlands Road. કે એ લોકો બધા ત્યાં રહેતા હતા, અને કે we used to come there and have parties. ને તો મેં કીધું કયું એડ્રેસ છે? તો કે મેં કીધું 68 Lowlands. તો કે હા, તો મેં કીધું that was my house. And Chaganbhai I met after I joined અહીંયા Shishukunj in London. Same way, there was somebody else, Bharatbhai Dhanani. એ એક દિવસ કહેતા હતા કે I used to come અહીંયા આગળ Lowlands રોડમાં. એટલે મેં કીધું, yeah, you used to come at my house. That's why everybody was calling Gandhi Ashram. So 68 Lowlands Road was known as Gandhi Ashram. A lot of people have stayed there. But anyway, we started this shop in 77. We used to do up and down to Hackney. But then in late 78, Bina was pregnant. And so after Christmas, then Christmas was used to be very busy period at the pharmacy. In those days, just that Christmas month, that December month, we used to take about 6,000-7,000 pounds, just that month. People in Hackney were working class, complete working class, didn't have money. But working class people, if they had money, and especially at Christmas, if they had money in the pocket, they'll just come and spend. So after Christmas, then I sort of said, I'm alone here. She's expecting. So I told her it's best if you go to Kenya. So she came to Nairobi in January 79 for delivery, and obviously then, because of circumstances, then she ended up in Mombasa with her parents for the delivery. And 12th February 79, that's when Komal was born in Mombasa. And Bina was there. And my dad and mom were in Nairobi. I was in London with the pharmacy. And my dad then, around 18th or 19th February 79, he was going to, my mom and dad were going to fly to Mombasa to see Komal. But then my cousin, who was also, we are all staying together in Nairobi. My cousin's second daughter's birthday was there. So he changed his booking. No, this was at the beginning of February, not towards the 18th. He was supposed to go towards the end of January or first week of February. And he then postponed for, 2-3 days, something. And on 3rd, I forget the date, but it was a Saturday, I think it was last Saturday of January, 79, he was fond of horse racing. So he used to go in Nairobi to this horse racing. And he went there, he drove there, and in the afternoon, about 4-ish, he was sitting with his friend, an African, he was a teacher, an African friend. And they were having coffee. And suddenly he said to him, he said, there's something wrong. And before he passed out, he just managed to give the telephone number of my cousin to this African teacher. Okay, can you ring him and ask him to pick me up? And then he passed out. Yeah. he had a stroke. So the teacher rang. So my cousin then went from Nairobi, from Parklands to this horse ride, which probably would take 30, 40 minutes. So he went there. He was unconscious. So he took him then to MP Shah Hospital in Nairobi, in Parklands. And I think he was unconscious for a day. And I think after a day, I think they rang me. And he said, this is what has happened. It's best if you come down. And the phone call came about 6 in the morning. I had to go to the pharmacy, try and arrange for locums, try and arrange. So I think I managed to get a locum. I'm not quite sure whether it was his Balu or there's another friend called Sudha. Both of them we are in touch. One of them came. So I flew out the next day. And then I saw my dad. He was in intensive care. He was in coma. And he stayed like that for about 4 or 5 days. Then on 9th February 79, he passed away. Big shock. Yeah. Bina was in Mombasa with Komal, hardly 3 weeks old. And even then, she did just come down on the funeral day and went back. Then everything is upheaval. You never expect that your dad is going to pass away. And before that, my dad and I had a conversation over the phone. He was saying that he was considering maybe putting up a factory in Mombasa to manufacture sulfate of alumina. And that was our big thing in Nairobi. We used to supply all over Kenya, Tanzania, even Uganda. But at that time it was imported. And he was thinking that, to put up a factory in collaboration with a manufacturer in India. And so at that time I told him, if you are going to do that, then I'll be interested in coming and joining the factory. Or, I mean, we had, and then this thing happened, and then I'm thinking now, how do I uproot my mother, who had always stayed there, and take her to London? So I made a decision that maybe I'll stay 1 or 2 years in Nairobi. But then what do I do with the pharmacy? Then I rang up my friend Balu. And I think at that time then he was locuming there. And I said, look, I'm thinking like this. I'm thinking he was working for Underwoods at that time. And I said, look, I'm thinking of if you can run Hackney shop, pharmacy, then I'll stay in Nairobi and take it from there. And even before we had decided anything, the next thing I know is he had given a resignation to Underwoods. Yeah. So obviously I flew in. Then we had made arrangements of how everything is going to, run, and I knew that he probably needed somebody else. So at that time, there's another relative of mine. You know the relative, originally Hasmukh Bhai, who had come to pick me up? His brother Indu Bhai was also by this time, no, he wasn't here, but his son Aniket, he had sent him to London for schooling. So even Aniket had come to do schooling, staying with his uncle Hasmukh Bhai. I think he must have been also like me, 8, 9 years old or something like that. So at this point, in 1979, he I think had just left school, finished schooling. So he must have been about 17, 18. And he was doing like odd jobs. So he came to the shop. So then I asked him, I said, do you want to work here? And he said, yeah, fine. So that was the pair that ran the shop, the pharmacy at that time. And I stayed in Nairobi, and I joined our hardware business with my cousin. But by then, unfortunately, I wasn't here even at that time. I was in UK all the time. But there were fractures in the family structure, which happens, because this I found out afterwards. My mom told me after my dad passed away that something happened at work. What, I don't know. And by then my dad had given my cousin 51% partnership. My dad was 49% and 2% was given to another local Kenyan, so that majority was a Kenyan partnership. I mean, that was the, otherwise you couldn't operate a business. So something must have happened. There were fractures even before I knew that. And mom said that the dad had told her that we can't stay in this house anymore, we need to separate out. But then this thing happened. And so I joined, so then I told my cousin that I've decided to stay here for a little while, join the business, which I frankly speaking, I don't think the decision was received very in a positive manner. I mean, nothing was said. Everything then obviously everything was transferred into my mom's name, and then under my name the business. So instead of 2 years, we stayed from 79 to 1987. But then in 1983, there was a coup in Kenya. 1982, there was a coup. 1983, Achal was born. The delivery was done in London. But then he was back in Kenya. So 83, but then in 84 or 85, my uncle, by then, he had shifted. This is after the death of my father. We are all staying jointly. Even then also we were staying together in one house. So then my uncle had shifted to London because my cousin had decided to send his wife and his kids to settle in London for their education, schooling. And so my uncle and auntie also were here. But then my uncle had like a stroke and he wasn't well. So in 1985, my cousin decided that he wants to come back. He wants to leave Nairobi. So we decided, so he said, either you take over and, pay his share, or what do I want to do? And my intention, the shop was still running, even though the pharmacy had its own problems here because of other things. And so at the back of my mind, I said, no, I need to also go back. So I said, no, we'll sell the business. So we sold the business to a very close friend of ours, the Patels. So the business was sold to them in 1985, and my cousin came back to London. And I sort of decided to stay a year or so because that friend asked me, he said, stay behind before so that they get used to. And we got on so well. And he was more than a brother to me. Rasik Patel. So we got on, and so I stayed in the business till 1987 with them. And he asked me, he said, if I want, to take some shares in there. And even before, his brother had asked me, that, do you want to keep your share? And I said, no. So in 1987, then, things in Kenya were not straightforward. And I needed to do a decision now. Either I stay in Kenya for good or I come back, because even the pharmacy was having problem, not because of Balu, but there were external influences that were influencing these two guys. So I knew that, so I decided that, okay, I'm leaving Kenya, 1987. But then my brother-in-law, my elder sister, and my brother-in-law were in Nairobi. And he had 2 kids, and one of them was almost coming up to 16. And we were thinking, now what about their future? I said, their future is not in India. At the same time, my other brother-in-law, my little sister, they're settled in Zambia. And I kept on telling them that, look, you need to shift out of Zambia, try and go to this America or somewhere. And the crunch came when I got a news, somewhere 84 or something, that my sister's house in Zambia was burned down by thieves. So I rang them and I said, look, this is the time you move out now. So my brother-in-law said there is a convention, Lions Convention in States. So he said, I'm going there. And then we'll work out a way of staying there. So under those pretenses that he's attending the convention, the whole family went to USA. In the meantime, I'm telling my other brother-in-law. And by the way, those 2 brother-in-laws are brothers, married to 2 sisters. So I'm telling my this elder brother-in-law that, what are we going to do? I said, you got to make application to Australia or Canada. But he said, how am I going to get? So I brought him a form for Canada. And I said, fill in this form. But he said, they're asking funds. And I said, don't worry. So I transferred some funds under his name here in UK to show that he has got funds. And in the meantime, the other brother-in-law in 1985, I told him to find some business. So he found a gas station. So I funded sort of, so that then he can start his process of, so he got a business there, while this other brother-in-law in Kenya had applied to Canadian. I said, make it an application before I leave. And then I came to UK. And also in UK, I was forming another pharmacy because I did not want to disturb this other pharmacy with these 2 people working in there. And in a way, they had carried on. Even though there were problems, I knew, but they had carried on. So I didn't want to disturb him. So I started another pharmacy nearby, hardly 4 or 5 minute walking distance, in Hackney, another pharmacy. So the 2 pharmacies were there. But in this other pharmacy, I had done as if this other brother-in-law had invested. So to try and get him a visa under that scheme. So whilst all this was going on, and I was back here in 87, running this other farm, started another pharmacy. After 6 months or so, my brother-in-law rings from Nairobi and he says, I've got a visa for Canada. So I said, don't think anything, just pack and go. But he said, I said, just pack and go, because one of the sons was coming of an age of, he would do his, in the meantime, in 87, I had arranged for his elder son, he was going to send him to India. I said, no. So I had arranged for him to be sent to Jacksonville, Florida, where that other brother had settled, to start his college there. And so I said, with this other one who is with him, just go. So he went to Toronto. After 2-3 months, he said, no, I don't like it here. And I told my elder sister, I said, no, look, no matter what happens, just stay there. So eventually, obviously, and in Canada, the good thing was that after staying 3 years, you can get citizenship. So by him staying there, in a way, both his sons were also eligible for citizenship. So they all were sorted. And in the meantime, my other brother-in-law in Florida, after 10 years of business, then you can apply for a permanent visa, what they call green card. So we managed to do that as well. So now at least that side of the family was all settled. And they're all done well now. Where all my sister's sons and one daughter, they're all pharmacists. 3 of them are pharmacists. The daughter is a journalist. They're all well settled. And whilst I was trying to, so I had all this name in my pharmacy here in London. So eventually I then got everything transferred back to me. And so since 87, then we are in London. Then in 1990, we changed from lowland. Until then, we were in lowlands land. But because of the parking restrictions, and I can't park the car, if I move the car, then she can't, find parking. We had meters outside. So then we changed to Kenton in 1990, 10 Backmead Avenue.
And that's where you've just moved from?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then, as I said, with the John Shishukunj, everything was going well. Komal was going to do her Bharatnatyam, her dance classes, and she was so good in the dancing and folk dancing. And then the Bharatnatyam, she was going to do her Arangetam. And we had arranged for her Arangetam to be done in September 1998. Yeah. And in April, Bina had gone to India to get her costumes. Her cards were printed for invitation, because we had arranged the dates in that big 1,000 people capacity in St. Albans. It was a council hall. And Bina had gone to India to arrange for her costumes and everything. That was in April. And then in May, Komal kept on saying, every now and then she would keep on saying, he said, Dad, this iron Getam is not going to happen. And I said, why do you say that? I said, look, everything has been booked, everything has been arranged, even the person playing the flute has been arranged by Mrs. Shakespeare, who was her dancing teacher. She has arranged, and a ticket has been, booked. The hall has been booked, the cards have been printed. I said, what can go wrong? The only thing I told her laughing, can go wrong is you coming down the stairs so quickly. Yeah. And she kept on saying that, sort of, 2-3 times. And you don't pay much attention. But then on 18th July 1979, Saturday, I was at my friend's house. These friends who we were in Nairobi together as well. And we all had then moved out to London. So this called Deepak, Shailu, and myself, we were at Deepak's house. And Komal had gone out. Achal was at his friend's house or something. No, he was at home with my mother. And I kept on telling my friends, oh, it's time I go home. It's time I go home. Yeah. He said, why? I said, no, tomorrow kale Shishukun picnic che. We are there to get up early and all that. So anyway, eventually I left. We went home, me and Bina. And we went to bed round about 11 o'clock. And kept an eye on the watch. Oh, she's not home, And then about 1 o'clock, phone rang. So I picked up the phone. I was in bed. But by then, Bina had something in her tummy, rumbling in the tummy all of a sudden. Really bad rumbling. And I had a little bit in my tummy, and you don't think much of it at that time. And then this phone rang, and I picked up the phone. And this guy at the other end said, oh, this is the police. And straight away my mind goes that they probably stopped Alokane, And he said, oh, can I speak to my officers? So I said, what officers? And at that moment, he must have realized that his officers have not reached home. So he just put down, don't worry. He put down the phone. So then I said, why would he ring? So I got, and I heard car door. So I got up to look outside, and there was a police car with 2 policemen coming out. So I knew that they are in trouble. Aloka. Yeah. So even before they rang the bell, I had switched on the light. And so I went down. And the policeman, and then he said, can we come in? So they came in, he said, who stays in the house and all that. So I told. And the next thing they say, we got some bad news. And so you think Aloka, they're in real trouble. And the policeman says, they have been in an accident, and your daughter passed away. And he just can't. And Veena at that time was just, she was down as well because they had asked to call her down. My mom was upstairs. She was sleeping, Achal was sleeping. And yeah. I kept on asking, are you sure? I said, what about the other person? He said, the other person is fine. Yeah. I said, what was it? There's another car also, people were okay. But your daughter has passed away. So, it's a shock. At the same time, the mind is thinking, I've got an elderly mother, I've got Veena, got Achal, how? So I sort of kept on saying to myself, you got to be strong. So the police and Veena just went upstairs, got my mom, and my mom came down. Achal was, obviously. And we were all down, and so I went to make sure he's okay. And he was sitting on the bed, crying. So I brought him down. Then the police, obviously they went through the photographs, batata ke who is this. Then they said, is there a relative or somebody? And I said, okay, call them. So I said, yeah. The first person I called was this Rasik Bhai, the person who had taken over our business in Kenya. He was in London. And we were together, and every time he came to London, even though his nephew's house was there, he would leave his bag, but he'll stay with us. That's how close we were. So I called him and I said, can you please come quickly? I didn't want to tell him on the phone. And I also said another friend who was Vidyut, I said, can you ring him and bring him and his wife together? So they are the three people. Even though my cousin and Bada were here, they were the people that I called. They came, and then I think about 6 o'clock in the morning we went to the hospital to identify him. And yeah, that changed everything. And the thing she kept on saying that is not going to happen. She knew it. And not only that, 2 days before, she and her friend called Sim, she is a Sri Lankan, but they were there. She also told her that, you know what, when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't recognize myself. This is 2 days before. And then they're like fooling around, but then she was saying that it was a moonlit night, so they went out on the kitchen roof, and they were just fooling around, sort of. And she said, "Oh, the next time you'll see me there." Yeah. All that. She knew probably unconsciously. Yeah. The book that was lying in her bedroom, which was open, the page that was open, was Yamraj coming. There was a CD lying next to it that she had left in her room. Life after death. So that changed everything. All the thinking changed.
Yeah, how do you almost like, there's too many coincidences almost, but like from that point, how do you deal with something like that? And how do you?
Yeah, you see, my priorities was my mother and Bina, to make sure that she doesn't go into depression. And a lot of people played their part. For about almost like 2 months, people were coming almost like every day to the house. And then, obviously, Achal, even at that age, he was strong. He at one time even he was giving advice to Bina. The look is written in the Bhagavad Gita. It's like this, So my immediate thing was how to, make sure that everything. So there were people who were coming. I made sure my very good friend, another Singh friend, very close, they used to come every night. And then obviously after 2-3 months, I didn't go to work for 2 months, but I had to start to bring life into. So then I had some work to be done. So I thought, well, the best thing is, this Singh friend is a contractor. So I thought best thing is to let him come and do that work. And then he was in the house, like during daytime, while I would be out. And he would sit with my mom, with Bina, talk at night, His wife would come. They have played a tremendous role, to sort of, to make sure nobody goes into depression or, So slowly, that's how it never goes away, it never went. I never used to show my emotions in front of them. I always used to have my cries on the train, going to work or coming back. And and I just make sure that we kept in touch with people. We, didn't withdraw ourselves from the society, because that's the first thing you do is, and slowly, it never goes away. But you learn to accept it. And Achal was, in a way, great. Even at that young age, he managed to keep his school and carry on with his normal life and studies and all that.
I'm also assuming Shishukunj must have played a huge role in helping the family.
Yes, Shishukunj, as I said, after the accident, almost for a month we had bhajans every night. For the first week, because after the accident, by the time we arranged everything for my oldest brother, my sisters and my nephews and all of them to come over from America, Bina's parents obviously couldn't come because they were old. They were in Mombasa, but her brother came. So to arrange and the funeral was almost a week after the incident. And even after it happened, for every month on the 19th, because she left home on the 18th. And when she was on the 18th in the evening, even when she was leaving, I had never done that. But on that day, I sort of moved, I was upstairs and I moved the curtain, and I saw her sort of going out of the house and sitting in the car. Yeah. So Shishukunj, especially some of the elder, Kantaben Mistry, she was with us in the Shishukunj, committee. Praful Bhai, I don't know if you know Suraj. No. Praful Bhai, Chagan Bhai, Pratap Bhai, Karan's dad, they were not here. So I had specifically asked Praful Bhai not to let Pratap Bhai know, because I didn't want, he was in States on it, and I didn't want him to cut his tour and come back. But he knew, he came to know, but I told Praful Bhai to tell him just to. But then when he came back, and we had for a month it was like that, and then in the meantime her Arangetam, that hole was there. So we had a tribute program to her, basically from all the people that she knew. So instead of Arangatham, we had that. And and then gradually everybody went into their own daily life. As I said, it never goes away, but we managed. Komal's friends, Meera, I don't know if you know Meera, Deepak's sister, Meera Haria, Meera, Nina, Preena, not Achal's Preena, and their families played a tremendous role. And if all those people were not around, I don't think we would have pulled through. Even today, all these people, they remember her on her birthday, on her death anniversary. We get messages. But as I say, that's life. Life has to carry on. And then it was good that Achal found somebody and, got married. And for the marriage, one of the programs that we did was the Mehfil night, which is what Komal would have wanted, just, dancing, folk dancing, drama, all that. So that's what we did at Grand Town Hall. We had about 700, 800 people. But that was more as her doing it, sort of, because she definitely would have liked something like that. And then, of course, the grandkids came and everything changed. The grandkids, have kept us very busy, but busy with joy, sort of, They've given us something to do, something to carry on, something to keep us active. And so people tell me I retired at the age of 70 when Reina was born. And people said, what will you do with your time? And at that time, I had told, by then I sold the shops and I was doing locuming for a few years. And where I was doing a guild pharmacy in Southall, I had told them that once a week I'll come here as a volunteer, and you know what? Not even a single day I have managed to go. I've just been busy. You're short of time. And then in the meantime, with these friends of Nairobi who also had settled, we all joined this Oswald Bridge Club, and that became our social life. Playing bridge, going on tours with the bridge people, we went on, we've been to, the first tour we did was Brazil. We did with these bridge people. And then we did to Turkey, so many tours to Turkey, to Burma, all with the bridge people. Yeah, yes, one or two cruises. So that has become, and then we, this other friend of mine, Naresh, he was in the Freemasonry, he is in the Freemasonry with me. So one day he told me, we go out walking, and that's another group, walking group. And one day I could not go for a walk, so he just went for a walk locally in Canton. And he was passing this Woodcock Park on Woodcock Hill, Shaftesbury Avenue, and he saw this bowling, open day bowlings. So he just popped his face in there just to see what it is. So there was this guy who called him in, and he said, look, next week we have got an open day. Why don't you come and try out bowling? So Naresh rings me and he said, next week we are going to this and try out bowling. And I said, bowling is a Budiani game, even though I was 70. I said, Budiani game, ema kya apne? For many, I said, okay, we'll see, try it out. And there was another person, Gulab, from the bridge club. So 3 of us went there and tried it out, and he said, okay, maybe. So we became members, 3 of us. And for the first year, there were only 3 of us. Then the following year, I told another 2 people, and I told Babu Bhai, very close friend, Shichukunda. And I told him, I said, why don't you try as well? So he tried as well. And પછી Woodcock Parkમાં આવતા હતા, એને મજા આવી. And there were another 2 people coming from Southgate. So one of them was in Sheshakund. That's how I know Mahesh Bhai Karine. So N.A. also I told him, said, why don't you come? So પહેલા તો કે ના, એમાં શું મજા આવે. But eventually he came. The following day, week, he brought somebody else, Bridge Club Mathi. So Elokabe they joined. So for a year, Elokabe out, they joined the club. So there was now, instead of 3, there was 6 of us. The following year, we managed to recruit about another 4 or 5 people, apna Asians. Before that, there were no Asians. So now we were about 10, 12 of us. Then in the meantime, Ajay Mahesh Bhai and the other person who came from Southgate, he found out that, there was a bowling club right next to his house in Arnos Grove. So he joined there, and they really had a good recruitment. That club was dying. They only had about 14, 15 members. So over the 3 years, now they have got about 50, 60 members. All Asians baki na ave.
So from you guys starting, that's
So same happened here at Woodcock Park. With 3 of us joining, now there are about 40 of us. Last year we had the biggest intake of Asians. So now this club is, I mean, obviously even they know, they're all it was a Jewish club, and it was obviously going down because they were all getting aged. They are all either moving out of the area. But now, you know, so eventually, and બધાય પહેલાં આવી જ ના જ કહેતા હતા કે ના ના એમાં શું. Once they come and they try, then, you know. So one of the coaches in the club that we go, Woodcock Park Bowling Club, about 2.5 years back, he approached me. And he said, we are getting short of coaches and we need a coach. So he said, I can train you. Why don't you become a coach? And I said, no. He said, so then I said, throughout my life, pharmacy was such a thing that you are always coaching somebody, yeah, like new pre-reg is coming, so you're coaching them, and I quite enjoyed it. So I said, maybe, okay, I'll try it out. So he trained me, so I became a coach. And as I said, last year I recruited so many, and we coached them. They all joined.
So good.
So yeah, the life, okay, it's tiring because you are aging, but so far we are active and we are hoping, because, which is one of the greatest news, Achal about a month back has sent me a message that somebody, one of his 2 friends, Ronald, I don't know if you know him, and somebody else, they were thinking of joining something else, and one of them said he was thinking of doing bowling. So Achal has sent me a message saying that, yeah, we will be open for coaching. So I'm hoping that the season starts in April, that they will actually come and they will start. And obviously then they will attract. Even Chaganbai and Anita Ben, I asked them to come and try it out. They came and tried it out, and they liked it. And I even arranged for a coaching last year. But then too much family, બધું થતું હતું, એટલે they decided not to. Hopefully he joins this year. So that's something, you know. So now with the bowling, with the bridge we play about 4 times a week, with the Fridays face-to-face, otherwise on computer, you know. And walking, there's walking group which is completely different at the weekends. And then at some other, with the bridge then you form other groups. So yeah, life is busy. We try to keep busy with the kids.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's a point I wanted to touch on. So just to kind of, because there's so much we spoke
Yeah.
about, to kind of round off. The kids obviously are such an important part of your life.
Yes, it's.
Talk to me about your relationship with them, and also like, talk to me about your relationship with them first, and then I'll ask another question after that.
Well, the kids, it's a gift from her, from the God in a way. For some reason, all three kids, I don't know why, they are become very attached to me. Obviously, as they grow up, but somehow, I don't know, it's that attachment. It's very unfortunate. I mean, I put down the names of Rian and Reina for Shishugunj, and Rian's turn even came, I think, last year. Because of COVID, it was put off. But his turn came. But by then, he was too much into cricket, and everything is on a Sunday. So you can't do everything, But I think one of the best decisions I took was to put Komal and Achal in Shishugunj. Because if you look at it, all their contacts and everything came from Shishugunj. Or even now, the friendships and all that, which was at Shishugunj, has carried on, while others, they come and go, fizzle out. And in that, even when I say Shishugunj had a big impact on me, is when I went to Shishugunj in Dar es Salaam, the stories they told us, and with that, what they told, how you should lead your life, how you should, stays till today. Even when I came to this country, for 3 years, I didn't go out clubbing or alcohol, because every time whatever was put into your mind in Shishugunj came. Plus the confidence that gave me, like, being alone in India, or coming to UK alone, all that training was, all these shibirs and everything that we did in Shishugunj. They gave me a lot of, confidence building, all that. So in that way, I was glad that I did put Achal and Komal, and they got a lot from there, culturally. And that way, I'm a bit, disappointed. The kids are kids, but they are doing other things, they're doing music and all that. And hopefully that will, the bond is, I don't know how to call, but they are very comfortable. Even Rian, at the age of 3, the things he used to talk to me, he would not talk to his dad, but he would, in the car, the things he would say, even I was amazed at this age, But that bond has just, naturally it has, you try to guide them according to what you think is right. Obviously, everything is changed from what we were brought up or what we were guided, which is good, which is fine. It has to be a progress.
So one day they might watch this video in like years to come, when they're a lot older. Is there a message that you'd like for them, or is there a message you'd like to give them for when they watch this, like in many, many years? Is there a piece of advice you'd like to give them?
The one message that I would like to pass on to them is that, like what my father when we were having coffee in Nairobi, just a year before he passed away, then he sort of he said, being the only son and two sisters, and he told me, he said, I've got faith in you that no matter what, you look after your sisters. And I'm glad that he gave me that the task to carry out, that it was ingrained in me. And I really tried to do that throughout my life. All my life, is my sisters, their families, looking after them, helping them, whatever I could do. So the same way, I would like the grandkids, and at the moment, obviously, the task falls on Rian, even though in this day and age everybody is equal. But the task falls on Rian that, yes, look after your sisters. Of course, parents, they do. And look after your sisters. Not that, that means that you don't look after your family. That goes hand in hand. But look after your sisters, be a family, be a larger family, and live life of not progressing yourself only, but also the motto in life is, how can I be helpful to others? And you do according to your capacity. That is the message that it's not going to the temple every day that, you are following your religion. Realistically, our religion is try and help others and try and do whatever you can do for others, but not being at the detriment to yourself or your family. That is one of the mottos. I belong to Freemasonry, and that is one of the things in Freemasonry. Yes, you help others, but you look after your family first and not at the detriment to your family and your connections. So yes, do good in life, live life peacefully, in harmony. That's the message.
Love that. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share? Or anything else you want to talk about that you might have?
No, I think I've tried to live my life according to our Hindu principles, not going deep into, I'm not a very religious person, but not going deep into religion. But the main thing is the religion says, try and help others. And that has been my motto. And I don't know whether I've succeeded, but I've tried.
Well, from sitting here for the last 3.5, 4 hours with you, I think you definitely succeeded with that. No, thank you so much.
Thank you for...
Thank you. How does it feel?
This saves me because Achal has been telling me to write down, to put it on the, and I keep on saying, yeah, one day I'll sit down and start writing. But this is easier than writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much,
Yeah.
obviously, you live such a rich life, there's so much to fill into, like, only 4 hours, so. But no,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for,
No, it's
doing it.